back to BeatlesReaction. I'm Peter.
I'm Vicky.
We are back again with another episode of our reaction video.
Yes.
For today is not a music, but it's a video about a musician, artist, band. It's Yoko arrives uninvited to Beatles meeting. Yeah, John Lennon's choice. Oh, it's something interesting, huh?
Yeah, I think it's about Beatles, maybe rivals or something.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this
Some
was
history about it.
Yeah, this was brought to us by Dan.
Yes.
Thank you, Dan, for this video. It's a more exploration, more of a. We are so curious to know about it, huh?
Yes, yes.
So, guys, welcome here. I enjoyed this video with us to the end.
Yeah, you know about here we explore each and every day. So it's about another history of the Beatles. So come check it out with us. Subscribe if you have not yet done so. In case you have another video, maybe your favorite, maybe you want some to share with us some story or something, a movie, you are always welcome. Feel free to share it on our support link. We have the Buy Me Coffee, that's the first one. We also have the Patreon community, so you can basically go there and choose the tier that really suits you and share the link there, share your video, share your movie, or just basically go to a description. We have an email there. Email us and then we'll guide you on how you can share with us that link. Otherwise, let's go.
Let's see.
Yoko arrives uninvited. That's like a storm or something.
Yoko arrives uninvited to Beatles meeting. John Lennon's choice left members in shock. September 1968. Abbey Road Studios, London. The Beatles were about to have the most important band meeting of their career. What none of them knew was that before the night ended, everything would change forever. It was 7 p.m. when Paul McCartney arrived at Studio 2. He was carrying a leather notebook filled with ideas for the White Album. GeorgeHarrison came next, his face showing the tension that had been building for months. RingoStarr walked in last, hoping this meeting would finally resolve the conflicts tearing the band apart. But someone was missing. John Lennon was late, again.
So this time maybe the Beatles were already experiencing the back and forth in their band, and they wanted maybe to solve it on this meeting.
To have a talk.
Yes, yes.
He was late, John Lennon.
Okay.
Where the hell is he? Paul muttered, checking his watch for the third time. George lit a cigarette and leaned against the mixing console. You know John. He operates on his own schedule now. They waited. 10 minutes, 20. The air in the studio grew thick with frustration and unspoken resentments. This meeting was supposed to address the growing distance between them, the creative differences, the money issues, the future of the greatest band in the world. But John wasn't there. Then, at 7:47 p.m., the studio door opened. John Lennon walked in. And he wasn't alone. Behind him, dressed entirely in black, her long dark hair falling past her shoulders, was YokoOno. Paul's face went pale. George stopped mid-sentence. Ringo looked at the floor. The unspoken rule of the Beatles had just been shattered. No outsiders at band meetings. Ever. Not wives. Not girlfriends, not managers. This was sacred ground. The four of them. Always just the four of them. Until now. Evening, lads, John said casually, as if bringing Yoko to a private Beatles meeting was the most normal thing in the world. Hope we didn't keep you waiting too long.
What?
Paul tried to keep his voice steady. John, this is a band meeting. A private band meeting. John looked at Paul with those sharp, intelligent eyes that had written 1,000 songs. I know what it is, Paul. Then you know that. Yoko stays, John interrupted. His voice was calm, but absolutely final. Where I go, she goes. From now on, that's how it is. The room went silent. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. This was the moment when everything broke. This was the moment when the Beatles began to die. And only one person in that room understood why. John Lennon had made the most shocking choice of his life. To understand that September night, you need to know who YokoOno really was. Not the woman the media portrayed. Not the villain the fans created. The real YokoOno She was born in Tokyo in 1933 to one of Japan's wealthiest banking families. While other children played with toys, Yoko attended classical music concerts and art exhibitions. Her parents expected perfection. She delivered genius. By the time she was 20, Yoko had moved to New York City and became part of the avant-garde art scene that terrified and fascinated the cultural elite. She created performances that made people uncomfortable, art that asked questions nobody wanted to answer. She was brilliant, difficult, uncompromising, everything John Lennon had been searching for his entire life. They met on November 9, 1966, at the Indica Gallery in London. John was bored with being a Beatle, exhausted from pretending to be happy. Yoko's exhibition was called Unfinished Paintings and Objects. There was a ladder in the gallery leading to a canvas on the ceiling. John climbed it. At the top, there was a magnifying glass hanging from a chain. Through it, painted in tiny letters on the white canvas, was one word: yes. Most people expected it to say no or something negative, John later recalled. But it said yes. I thought, this is the first show I've been to that said something warm to me. He didn't know it then, but his life had just changed forever. For the next year and a half, John and Yoko circled each other. He was married to Cynthia, trapped in a life that felt like a golden cage. Yoko was married to her second husband, filmmaker Tony Cox. But there was something between them, an understanding, a connection that went deeper than anything John had ever experienced. They began collaborating on experimental art projects, sound recordings, film experiments, conceptual pieces that confused everyone who saw them. The other Beatles didn't understand. Cynthia didn't understand. The media definitely didn't understand. But John understood. For the first time in his life, someone saw him not as a Beatle, not as a product, not as a symbol, but as an artist. As a human being capable of creating something beyond commercial pop music. In May 1968, while Cynthia was on vacation in Greece, John invited Yoko to his house in Weybridge. They stayed up all night recording experimental sounds. Two artists, tape number 1, unfinished music, pure expression. At dawn, they made love for the first time. John Lennon later described it as the moment he was truly born. When Cynthia returned and discovered them together, John didn't apologize, didn't make excuses. He simply told her the truth. I've fallen in love with Yoko. Everything that happened after that moment, the divorce, the media frenzy, the public hatred directed at Yoko, was inevitable. But John didn't care. He had found what he'd been searching for since he was a boy in Liverpool, trying to fill the hole his mother's death had left in his soul. Hey, before we continue with this incredible story, I need to give you an important warning. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube has removed their subscriptions without notice. Just take a quick look at the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any of the exclusive content that's coming up. And while you're there, leave that powerful like that helps me a lot with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who is part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. Back in Studio 2 at Abbey Road, the tension was suffocating. Paul McCartney stood across from John Lennon, his face flushed with anger he was trying desperately to control. John, can I talk to you outside for a minute? Whatever you have to say, you can say in front of Yoko. Paul's jaw tightened. Fine, this is a Beatles meeting, not a Beatles plus Yoko meeting. She shouldn't be here. John lit a cigarette, his movements slow and deliberate. Last time I checked, I'm still a Beatle, and I decide who I bring to meetings. GeorgeHarrison finally spoke up, his voice quiet but firm. John, mate, you know the rule. We've always kept band business between the four of us. It's not about Yoko personally. Isn't it? John shot back. Because it sure feels personal. The way you all look at her. The way you talk about her when you think I can't hear. Ringo tried to play peacemaker. Nobody's saying anything against Yoko. We just need to talk about the band, about where we're going, and that's easier if it's just us four. John took a long drag from his cigarette. You want to know where we're going? I'll tell you. We're going exactly where we've been going for the past 2 years. Nowhere. We're making music we don't believe in, playing roles we're sick of playing, pretending we're still the same kids who screamed, yeah, 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 like we actually meant it. That's not fair, Paul said. We're evolving. The White Album is our most experimental work yet. Experimental? John laughed, but there was no humor in it. You think a few sound effects and backward guitars make us experimental? Yoko's been doing real experimental art for 10 years. She's been pushing boundaries while we've been worried about record sales and pleasing Brian Epstein's ghost. The mention of their late manager hung in the air like smoke. Paul's voice dropped. That's a low blow, John. It's the truth. We've been lost since Brian died. We've been pretending we know what we're doing, but we don't. I don't. Not anymore. Yoko hadn't said a word since entering the studio. She sat in the corner, perfectly still, watching everything with those dark, penetrating eyes. George stubbed out his cigarette. So what are you saying, John? That Yoko's going to manage us now? That she's going to be at every recording session, every meeting, every decision? John looked at George with something close to pity. I'm saying that Yoko helps me see clearly. She helps me create honestly. And if you can't accept that, then maybe we need to have a different conversation about what this band actually is. What happened next? Nobody expected. Paul McCartney, the diplomatic one, the mediator, the one who always kept his emotions in check, finally broke. You want honesty? Paul's voice was rising now. Fine. Here's honesty. You've changed, John. Ever since you met her, you've changed. You used to care about this band, about us. Now all you care about is your avant-garde nonsense and proving you're some kind of serious artist too important for pop music. At least I'm trying to be authentic. Authentic? Paul was almost shouting now. We wrote songs together, John. We changed the world together. And now you're throwing it all away because some artist from New York told you that commercial success means you're not legitimate? John stood up so fast, his chair fell backward. Don't you dare put words in Yoko's mouth. She's never said anything like that. This is about me, about what I need to be happy. And if you can't understand that, then maybe you never really knew me at all. The room went silent again. That's when YokoOno finally spoke. Her voice was quiet, accented, but absolutely clear. Perhaps I should leave. John turned to her immediately. No. John, they're right. This is between the four of you. There is no four of us anymore, John said, and everyone in the room felt the weight of those words. There hasn't been for a long time. We're just too scared to admit it. 3 days after that meeting, the Beatles returned to Abbey Road to continue work on the White Album. Yoko came with John. She didn't ask permission. John didn't ask his bandmates. She simply walked into Studio 2 with him, carrying a pillow and a blanket. While the Beatles recorded, Yoko set up a small space in the corner of the studio. She sat there, sometimes reading, sometimes watching, sometimes sleeping. Paul tried to ignore her presence. George worked through his frustration with his guitar. Ringo played his parts and tried not to get involved in the tension. But John was different. Every few minutes, he would look over at Yoko, check that she was comfortable, ask her opinion on a take, share a private joke that nobody else understood. The other Beatles had never seen John like this with anyone, not with Cynthia, not with any of his previous girlfriends. This was different. This was obsession. Or love. Or both. The first major...
I think that was obsession and love.
Or love or both, huh?
But that was too personal. Imagine if everyone would have that stand, like I should bring my maybe girlfriend or lover to maybe studio to the meetings, how chaotic will that be?
But John, before the love, I think the foundation of the love was musically brought in. So he felt after falling in love, he felt that Yoko came with something extra to his music. So he felt like it would be better if I include her to the band to be helping us, since our manager died, who was helping us the way. So I think Yoko filled the gap of the managers in the in John's life, and he felt better to share with the others, which they didn't take it well because it was against their rule.
Even the approach in which maybe he brought that matter, it's better you come approach them and tell them, is it right if I bring
he could
this
ask
and this?
it, huh?
Yeah, but he was like coming with all chest, and like he stays where I go, she goes. Where I stay, she stays. So that was a bit rude to the band, and they felt like, okay, you are really changing.
And remember, that's also the way he ended him and Cynthia's relationship. He even ended it like unapologetic.
Yeah, so I think John was more of an apologetic one. Okay.
Let's go.
The incident happened during a recording of Obla Di Obla Da. Paul was frustrated because John wasn't taking the song seriously. John thought the song was commercial garbage. The tension had been building for hours. During a break, Yoko walked over to the piano and played a few experimental notes. Paul's face went red. "Sorry, Yoko, but we're actually trying to work here." End quote. Yoko looked at him calmly. "I was just exploring the sound." "Well, perhaps you could explore it when we're not in the middle of recording an album." John was across the studio in seconds. "Don't talk to her like that." "I'm not talking to her like anything. I'm asking for some basic professional courtesy while we're trying to work." Professional courtesy? John's voice was ice. "Like the professional courtesy you showed when you took over production of this album without asking anyone. Someone had to step up after Brian died. And you just assumed it should be you, that you should make all the decisions, that your songs are more important than mine or George's." George, who'd been tuning his guitar in the corner, spoke up. "He's not wrong, Paul. You have been a bit controlling lately." Paul looked betrayed. "I'm trying to keep this band together. Someone has to." "By making everyone miserable?" John shot back. "By criticizing every idea that isn't yours? By treating us like session musicians on your solo album?" The argument escalated from there. Old resentments surfaced. Creative differences that had been simmering for years boiled over. And through it all, Yoko sat silently in her corner, watching the greatest band in the world tear itself apart. Later that night, after everyone else had gone home, John and Yoko stayed in the studio alone. "They hate me," Yoko said quietly. John put his arm around her. "They don't hate you. They hate change. They hate that I'm not the same John who wrote 'I Want to Hold Your Hand' when we were kids. Maybe I shouldn't come anymore. Maybe it would be easier." "No," John's voice was firm. "You're the only thing keeping me sane right now. You're the only real thing in my life. Everything else is an image, a performance. But with you, I can be myself." Yoko looked at him with those penetrating eyes. "Even if it costs you the Beatles?" John was quiet for a long moment. "The Beatles have been dying for years," he finally said. "We've just been too famous to notice." October 14th, 1968. 3 in the morning. John Lennon couldn't sleep. He and Yoko were staying at his Aunt Mimi's house in Liverpool. They'd come to escape the pressure of London, the constant scrutiny, the hatred that followed them everywhere. But you can't escape your own mind. John sat in the kitchen, smoking cigarette after cigarette, thinking about the choice he'd made. The choice he was still making every single day. The Beatles or Yoko? His past or his future? The problem was, it shouldn't have been a choice. In a perfect world, he could have both. He could have his best friends, his creative partners, his legacy, and the woman he loved. But the world wasn't perfect. The world was demanding he choose. Paul had made his feelings clear. George was growing distant. Even Ringo, who tried to stay neutral, was pulling away, and the media was crucifying Yoko. Every newspaper called her the woman who broke up the Beatles. Yellow journalists wrote racist articles about the Oriental temptress who'd seduced John away from his true calling. Fans sent death threats. Someone even sent a funeral wreath to the recording studio. John read every article, every hateful letter, every vicious attack, and it destroyed him. Not because he doubted Yoko, but because he'd brought this on her. His fame, his choices, his inability to protect her from the consequences of loving him. "You're thinking too loud," Yoko said from the doorway. She was wearing one of John's shirts, looking small and vulnerable in the dim kitchen light. "I'm sorry," John said. "Didn't mean to wake you." Yoko sat down across from him. "Talk to me. I don't know if I can do this anymore. The band, the pressure, the constant fighting." "Then don't." John looked at her in surprise. "What? If it's making you this unhappy, don't do it. Life's too short to spend it miserable." "You make it sound so simple." "It is simple. People just pretend it's complicated because they're afraid of change." John lit another cigarette with shaking hands. "If I leave the Beatles, I'm nothing. I'm just another washed-up rock star who got too big for his britches." Yoko reached across the table and took his hand. "You're John Lennon, with or without the Beatles. Your talent doesn't disappear because you leave a band. But everything we built, everything we created together, will still exist. Those songs aren't going anywhere, but you can't live in the past forever. At some point, you have to decide what you want your future to look like." John looked at this woman who turned his world upside down in less than 2 years. This woman who everyone blamed for everything wrong with his life. "I want a future with you," he said quietly. "I want to make art that matters. I want to be honest and real, and not have to pretend to be someone I'm not anymore." "Then that's your answer." "But Paul will survive. They'll all survive. The question is, will you?" That question hung in the air like smoke. Will you survive? It was the question John had been avoiding since that first night at the Indica Gallery. Since that word painted on the ceiling. Yes. Yes to change. Yes to risk. Yes to choosing yourself over everyone else's expectations.
Yeah.
John stubbed out his cigarette. "I think the Beatles are finished. We just haven't admitted it yet." Yoko didn't say anything. She didn't have to. They both knew he was right. January 1969, Apple Corps headquarters, London. The Beatles gathered for what would become their final real attempt to salvage the band. Yoko came with John. This time, nobody protested. They'd given up fighting that battle. The meeting was supposed to be about their next project, the album that would eventually become Let It Be. But really, it was about whether the Beatles could continue existing at all. Paul tried to take control of the meeting. "Look, I know things have been difficult, but we're the Beatles. We've been through worse. We can get through this." George shook his head. "Can we, though? When's the last time we actually enjoyed making music together?" Nobody had an answer. Ringo spoke up, his voice sad. "I don't want to be in a band where we can't even be in the same room without fighting." "So what are you saying?" Paul demanded. "We just give up? Throw away everything we've built?" John finally spoke. His voice was calm, resolved. "Maybe that's exactly what we need to do." Paul stared at him. "You can't be serious."
Yeah.
"I've never been more serious. Look at us, Paul. Really look. We're not friends anymore. We're not creative partners. We're just 4 people stuck in a situation none of us actually want to be in anymore." Speak for yourself.
Yeah.
I am speaking for myself. That's the whole point. For years, I've been John the Beatle. Playing the part, saying the right things, making the right music. But that's not who I am anymore. Paul's voice broke. "So you're just going to leave? After everything?" "I'm not leaving you. I'm leaving the Beatles. There's a difference." "Is there?" The question hung heavy. George stood up. "You know what? Maybe John's right. Maybe we've outgrown this. I've got songs nobody wants to hear. Paul's got his vision. John's got Yoko and his experimental stuff. Ringo just wants to be happy. Why are we forcing something that doesn't work anymore? Because we're the Beatles, Paul said desperately. We're the biggest band in the world. We matter. We mattered, John corrected gently. Past tense. What we did was incredible, revolutionary. But that doesn't mean we have to keep doing it forever. Yoko, who'd been silent the entire meeting, finally spoke. Can I say something? Everyone turned to look at her. Even now, after months of her presence, they weren't used to her voice in Beatles discussions. I've watched you all destroy yourselves, trying to preserve something that's already gone. And I've been blamed for it, hated for it. But the truth is, the Beatles were ending long before John and I got together. You were just too scared to admit it. Paul looked like he wanted to argue, but no words came. John didn't leave because of me, Yoko continued. He left because he was suffocating. And if you're honest with yourselves, you all are too. She looked at each of them in turn. Paul, you want complete creative control. George, you want respect for your songwriting. Ringo, you want peace. And John wants freedom to be himself without apology. None of those things are wrong. But they can't all exist in the Beatles anymore. The room was silent. Finally, Ringo spoke. So what do we do? John looked at his friends, his brothers, the people he'd shared the most incredible journey with.
Yeah.
We let it end with dignity. We make one more album. We don't announce anything yet. But we accept that this is the end. And we don't make each other miserable trying to pretend otherwise. Paul had tears in his eyes. I can't believe you're doing this. I can't believe it took us this long, John replied. The meeting ended without any formal decision. But everyone knew. The Beatles were over. The official breakup wouldn't come for another year. Paul would eventually be the one to announce it publicly. The media would continue blaming Yoko for decades. But the truth was more complicated, more human. The truth was that John Lennon had been dying inside the Beatles for years before he met YokoOno. The fame had become a prison. The expectations a straitjacket. The image a mask he couldn't remove. Yoko didn't break up the Beatles. She gave John permission to save himself. Years later, in one of his final interviews, John would say, I gave 10 years to the Beatles. They were incredible years, revolutionary years. But at some point, you have to choose between being a legend and being alive. I chose alive. That night at Abbey Road, when John walked in with Yoko and refused to send her away, he wasn't being selfish or cruel. He was making the most important choice of his life. He was choosing himself. He was choosing honesty over image. He was choosing the woman who saw him as an artist, not a product. He was choosing a future over a past, no matter how golden that past had been. The other Beatles eventually understood. It took years, decades in some cases, but they understood. Paul would later say, I was angry at John for a long time, but looking back, I get it. We were all suffocating in different ways. John was just brave enough to be the first one to say it. George was more direct. The Beatles had to end. We'd become a tribute band to ourselves. John leaving freed all of us to become who we were meant to be. And Ringo, always the philosophical one. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let something die so something else can be born. John and Yoko stayed together until the day he died. 12 years of marriage, 12 years of art, 12 years of being exactly who they wanted to be without apology. They made experimental music that confused people, staged bed-ins for peace that the media mocked, created art that critics dismissed. And John was happier than he'd ever been as a Beatle, because he'd learned the most important lesson of all. You can't save yourself by pleasing everyone else. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is choose yourself, even if the world calls you selfish for it, even if the media writes hateful articles, even if your friends don't understand, even if history judges you. John Lennon chose himself that September night at Abbey Road, and in doing so, he showed the world that sometimes the most shocking choice is simply being honest about who you are and what you need. The Beatles ended, but John Lennon finally began. And that uninvited guest who walked into the studio that night, she wasn't the villain of this story. She was the mirror that showed John he'd been playing a role his entire life. And sometimes the most loving thing a mirror can do is show you the truth. If this story of courage, choice, and the price of authenticity moved you, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button. Share this with someone who needs to hear that choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's survival.
Yes.
Have you ever had to choose between who people expected you to be and who you actually are? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to ring that notification bell for more untold stories about the people behind the...
Yeah. Oh wow, that's an amazing story.
Yes. Oh my God. Like it brought so many history and made some things clear as well.
Yeah.
We were like, what caused the Beatles? Maybe who started everything?
Yeah.
Like what was the root cause? But we've really learned like it started by, I think, the death of their manager
yeah.
affected them so badly.
Exactly.
So they had to just pretend they're doing the right thing. They have no one to guide them. Everyone is like maybe Paul is like, I can take over. John is like, I can take over. So there is that tension and confusion between the whole thing. And then another thing that really caused maybe the back and forth so much was the when Yoko just came into their meetings. Maybe when John was like, I should always be with Yoko wherever, maybe if it's studio session, if it's the meeting and all those. So that caused maybe them fighting in terms of maybe quarreling, telling each other the truth. Maybe it has been going on but no one has said it. So that's the moment where everything now unveiled. Everyone was talking about maybe what they have been observing and all that, what they are going through.
Exactly. Thank you very much, Dan, for this. And you told us that this was AI generated, but it has that flow, that very good storytelling on it. Also, the conversation, you could feel it real
Yes.
on this story. And then, turning the story, saying that John, I think Yoko filled in the space that I said earlier, filled in the space that the manager had left in John's life.
Yes, in
and then
John's life.
secondly, on the decision making, there had no one who could just accept any other's opinion. As you see, George say that my songs are not being considered as right with respect, and my songs are not taken with respect. You see, and Paul's wants his idea to be correct, trying to take charge, which I think was really affecting all of them, and specifically John also wanted the same role. So I think hierarchy also made one of the major problem on the floor. Like they had not that clear hierarchy of the manager who is this next one to have a say. By the way, because at that time, even when John brought Yoko, he had according to him, he had no one could be like a legitimate to ask him why he's bringing Yoko to the meeting, because he sees that it's right, and then there is no manager here to ask me for that. There's no, you see, and I'm doing what's right according to me.
I think he was more now prioritizing more about himself, choosing himself, and not just faking because of fame, because they are the Beatles, because the Beatles says this and they should do. So this time he wanted to be real, to be himself more, and at the end of it, he ended up choosing himself and what's best for him.
And then can I say, like, John was the first one to see his future besides the Beatles, so he had that a second option, like besides the Beatles, besides the other three, I have Yoko, who we can move together musically. We can build something nice. We can do something that I feel free making it compared to the Beatles. So at the moment, the Beatles were trying to the other three were trying to hold to the Beatles because they had nowhere.
Yeah, they
apart
felt
from,
like this is what we've been doing, we've built this, so we can't
yeah,
let it go. Even at the end, making that decision like Beatles will be no more was really tough for them because they didn't make an official, like
yeah,
everyone couldn't accept like it's over, but deep down they just knew it's over. But just speaking out and letting everything go, it was like a big issue when it comes to Paul and all. He was like, are you serious? Are you seriously gonna
yeah,
let all this go? Like, it was really a tough decision. Even
exactly.
for John, he had to just sit down, think about it, and making that decision was really tough for them.
Exactly, but also it opened doors for them to build their personal journey, their
Yeah,
personal
lives. Yeah.
yeah, experiences, music, their personal music, because we have got a chance to even listen to a separate music being done alone with Paul and George alone, Paul alone, George alone, and then
And John.
John doing his musical alone. So it's something that, let's say, God's plan, or also we can say growth,
Yeah,
it.
it's brought growth
Yeah,
and
growth.
be choosing yourself and
Yeah.
just doing what you love. Yeah.
Thank you for this episode. Thank you, guys. Share your genuine opinion on this. What's your opinion? And don't forget to like it, subscribe here. And if you have any of the other interesting such as this one, bring to us, would be so nice. Otherwise, subscribe.
Thank you so much for watching. See you on the next one.
We are out.
Bye bye.